This was not by any means overnight. The whole thing took me like about 10 years to regroup, to even come up with this framework to help educate others. It took a while. So don't ever feel that this is anything overnight. And I realized we need all these critical pieces that help us overcome these setbacks. And worse, if you've been through any kind of trauma, whether it's childhood related, whether it's related to any other aspect of your life, then all these pieces become so critical, and they're also important. They're all interdependent, and they're all necessary to live that holistically wealthy lifestyle.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Successful with ADHD. Today, I have Keisha Blair, and she is an award-winning international best-selling author of the Holistic Health series of books. And she has tons of holistic wealth information, including 32 life lessons to help you find purpose, prosperity, and happiness, holistic wealth expanded and updated. And what's really cool is she helps you find your life purpose and achieve financial freedom. And actress Kelly Rutherford, the star of Gossip Girl, that I'm sure a lot of you have watched, wrote the foreword. And Keisha coins the term holistic wealth with the publication of the first holistic wealth book, which brought widespread recognition. She's a Harvard-trained policy expert and trained economist with extensive experience in the public, private, and non-for-profit sectors. And she's the founder of Keisha Blair Institute of Holistic Wealth, graduate of Executive Leadership Program at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. She also has a podcast, Holistic Wealth, and founder of Holistic Wealth Movement. I can go on and on and on, but she's been featured in many places, including Maria Shriver's Sunday Paper, the New York Times, the Laura Coates Show, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the New York Observer, Real Simple Magazine, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, Essence Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, and so many others. And her book is also an award-winning finalist in the 2020 Best Book Awards and award-winning finalist in the 2020 International Book Awards. I'm going to just stop there. There is a lot more that we can share about Keisha. She has a lot of accolades, and I'm just excited for all of you who are listening today to learn how to become free with your finances. And I know with ADHD, it is so hard to even know what we're spending and what's coming in, what's going out. So this is a very popular conversation that I have with people, and your approach is so unique because it talks not only about what's going in and out, it's the holistic approach as well. So can't wait to dive into that with you today here on Successful with ADHD.
It's great. Thanks for having me, Brooke. It's great to be here to discuss this.
So Keisha, tell us a little bit about how you got interested in financial freedom and holistic wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's unbelievable, the journey, Brooke, because I didn't think myself to be like a likely economist. I I really didn't like it in school. I didn't like math like many, women, many people out there, not just women. I just had this fear of numbers. So I really started to get interested in it in university when I started studying other related topics like gender equality and, women's economic empowerment. And that's what led me further and deeper into this, because I honestly have this passion for that topic. And when I became widowed at 31, it became so real to me, these issues, and having that sense of financial freedom and financial empowerment, and also trying to get the message out there to others about why this is so important. So that's what led me on this journey towards holistic wealth. And not only the financial piece, as you know, Brooke, that, you mentioned in your intro, but also the aspects of holistic resilience and being, able to overcome setbacks and having that emotional resilience that we need throughout our day-to-day lives. And wrapped up in that is also, the physical health aspects, as well as emotional well-being and our mental health and living meaningful lives in general. But that's
Hmm.
basically how I came onto this path. I kind of just stumbled onto my purpose through different means, and thankfully I found it. And, I've just been trying to educate as much as possible, as many people out there as to why this is so important for all of us.
So, Keisha, that is a really fascinating topic. And I'm so sorry for your loss at such a young age. And there's so many advisors out there that say life insurance is so important because you never know when something's going to happen. So, you had that severe event that happened in your life that was all the more reason to focus on how to understand your finances and how they play a part in your life. So, what was it, if you don't mind going there, that once you were widowed, you realized how important the financial education was for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, luckily, Brooke, we had planned ahead. My husband and I, he was a CPA, he was an accountant. I was, a trained economist. Luckily, we had planned ahead, and you mentioned certain things, like we had a life insurance policy. We had several, as a matter of fact, and we had made sure that, we were organized financially in terms of having our documents in a safe place that we knew, both of us knew where it was. And, we did the budgeting and all of those financial pieces. But when he died, I realized that, okay, many people might not have this in place. As a matter of fact, when he died, many of my friends in my friend circle didn't have life insurance policies in place. They all ran and took out immediately as soon as he died. Several family members too, in my extended family. And I realized just how much people out there would be unprepared. For me personally, what hit home for me, even though I had these things in place, was that I felt traumatized. I also felt like, even though we had planned financially, the money that was there, and you mentioned the life insurance policy, all of those things, it came with some amount of guilt, and I did not foresee that happening because I didn't think this would happen anyway. Like, we take out life
Sure.
insurance policies and we think it probably won't happen anyway, right? We never
We
really
hope that the life insurance policy wins, right? That we bet
right.
against
We never actually
ourselves.
think we're going to collect anything, right?
Correct.
It's unbelievable. And then once you start, you're just like, well, I would give all of this up in a heartbeat to have him back. And I don't want it, quite frankly. I will let it sit there in an investment and not even look, because to me, it represents the pain of him gone. And so I realized, even as a trained economist, that, hey, I'm prepared, but guess what now? Like, I have this trauma associated with it, and it extends financially. So I started researching on financial trauma and money
Hmm.
trauma. And lo and behold,
Hmm.
I mean, I coach people with it now. Lo and
Hmm.
behold, I figured out, you know what, I have some. And then, in addition to that, in terms of overcoming this, I realized that, obviously, like, we know money isn't everything. We can put that
Hmm.
life insurance policy in place. We can put all these financial pieces in place, and they're great. They're absolutely necessary. But then you realize, oh my gosh, my emotional health, my mental health, my physical health
Yeah.
suffered because of this
Yes.
immensely. Like, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I kept, like, rehearsing events because I saw him die. Like, he died right before
Oh,
me. And so I thought, oh my gosh, like, yeah, having that's great, but what about these other pieces that are so important for me to overcome this? And I'm a new mom. Like, my husband died 8 weeks after I gave birth to my second child, and my first
I'm
child was
so
only 3.
sorry. Oh, I'm
Exactly.
getting the chills. I'm so sorry.
Exactly. So, as you can imagine, I'm a new mom. I am suffering from grief. I'm suffering from recovering from childbirth. And here I am recognizing all these things. And luckily, I had the self awareness and the training to kind of go through this. I mean, it took me a long time, though, right? This was not
Oh,
by
I
any
can't
means
imagine.
overnight. The whole thing took me like about 10 years to
Wow.
regroup, to even come up with this framework to help educate others. It was by no means, and once people get into the book, and I know you've also read it too, but once people
Mm-hmm.
you realize this took a while. So don't ever feel that this is anything overnight. And I realized we need all these critical pieces that help us
Mm-hmm.
overcome these setbacks. And worse, if you've been through any kind of trauma, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
childhood related, whether it's related to any other aspect of your life,
Mm-hmm.
then all these pieces become so critical, and they're all so important. They're all interdependent, and they're all necessary to live that
Mm-hmm.
holistically wealthy lifestyle. So that's kind
Yeah.
of, how that journey unfolded into this.
You have a test on your website, and I took it, and it explains what type of spender you are, or what type of personality you have towards finances. So, can you explain that a little bit, and how you work with people once they take that test, what that offers you?
Absolutely. And so, just going back to my personal experience, so I realized too, Brooke, after he died, that my money confidence was just shot. Like, here I am, a trained economist who had lived with a CPA. And when he died, I found myself questioning my money decisions over and over again. Would he do this? Would he buy that? What would he think if I did this? Like, over and over again.
Yeah.
And when I wrote the first book, the first edition of the book in 2019, I put in there like it was like maybe, a paragraph about knowing your personal financial identity and why it's so important. And I had outlined that it's so important because we often transition into adulthood not having gained a
Mm-hmm.
sense of who we are financially. And
Isn't it
so,
amazing that we don't learn that in school? We don't learn about how to spend money, or what our personality around money coming in and out is. And that really drives humanity.
absolutely, absolutely. And worse, when we've been through any kind of trauma. It's unbelievable, though, that I came up with this quiz, and women came up to me afterwards, and men, and said, well, I want to learn more about my financial identity. And so in the updated version of the book, there's a whole chapter on it now. And of course, there's more on the Institute's website. But it's so important for those of us who may struggle being organized and even communicating how we feel about money. Because if I
Mm-hmm.
know my personal financial identity, I'm able to really hone that and be true to myself and communicate it. So for me personally, just using me as an example, after my husband died, I felt very guilty about being a risk taker because that's my money personality. I didn't know that yet, though, until I developed the quiz, and I was like, okay, so this is why, this is what's happening to me. Because he was a minimalist. And
Mm-hmm.
we often would, like,
Just get
go
rid of
back and
stuff.
forth exactly on things that I would want. I'd take the risk, like, and he wouldn't. And then after he died, and I found myself wanting to just burst open to take these risks, I was like, why do I feel this way? But after embracing it and learning more about who I am, why I am the way I am in terms of my money philosophy in life, my spending, my saving, my investment habits, then it came home real to me as to why I was having that conflict. And so it's so important for each one of us to be able to embrace that, during good times, during bad times. So we know
Mm-hmm.
who we are, and we can be guilt free in terms of how we spend, save, and invest our money, and not compare ourselves to others in terms of how they're living their life.
Exactly. Isn't that the thing? Everything starts with awareness, whether it be around finances, about the way that our ADHD brain works. Everything starts with learning more about you before you can make changes and really accept yourself for who you are.
Absolutely. And I think that's why this framework, the holistic wealth framework, is also very helpful with those for those with
Mm-hmm.
ADHD, because it embraces concepts like mindfulness and mindful money, and being
Mm-hmm.
mindful with your spending and saving, and also, this conscious living about our decisions, why we're doing this a certain way, why we're procrastinating, why we're not
Right.
taking the time to, let's say, look over our finances in the way we should be. So I think from that perspective, this holistic lens is so important.
I completely agree with you, because it doesn't just start with spending, right? That's just a reaction to a reason.
Hmm.
And that reason could be deep rooted. It could be impulsive, looking for dopamine in the sense
Right.
of ADHD, or it could be deep wounded, trauma related, or we cannot spend and have a scarcity mindset because we're afraid that we're going to go into debt.
Mm-hmm.
So once people become aware of their spending style and their identity, what do you suggest? And I'm sure it's not a one size fits all, but how can you help the listeners here today? Quick tip for someone with ADHD. And of course, their identity can be different regardless if they have ADHD or not, or if everyone listening has ADHD. But what would be that second step after they learn about what type of identity they have financially?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always tell people, and I mean, this is also very helpful for those with ADHD, individuals with ADHD as well. Write down, write down, and I often advocate for people within a personal mission statement. Write down what your money mission statement is and kind of your money goals, and incorporate your personal financial identity into it. So
Mm,
if you're a risk taker or you're a minimalist or another identity or maximalist, then write down your money mission and some
mm-hmm,
key money goals under it and really
mm-hmm,
incorporate your personal financial identity into it. The other thing is really start embracing it, because I think with many of us, as I said, like we tend to assume the identity of those who are significant around us. So it's like, well, we'll start living it
yeah,
and use it to your advantage. I think one thing that's great about doing the quiz is that you'll automatically see, once you go question by question, what your strengths and weaknesses are. And
mm-hmm,
honing your personal financial identity helps you over time to recognize what your weaknesses are. In the book,
mm-hmm,
there's a chapter on it that has the strengths and weaknesses of each, because they all have strengths and weaknesses. There's no good or bad, there's no better or worst.
sure,
Each one of them has amazing strengths and each one of them has weaknesses. So go through, look through your life, look through the areas of your personal financial management process, whatever that is, your budgeting, your savings, and think about the gaps and think
mm-hmm,
about how you would be able to basically overcome those. And I,
mm-hmm,
I think with going through the quiz and going through the strengths and weaknesses, it becomes evident what those are. And I mean,
mm-hmm,
for instance, if you're a risk taker like I am, then you can
mm-hmm,
automatically assume what the weaknesses of that personality would be like. It's like, okay,
mm-hmm,
what's the next big thing? What's the next shiny object I can invest in? But of
yeah,
course, we have to rein that impulse in. I have that strong impulse as well. So I do have to watch my impulse control when it comes to investing and making sure that I'm not getting too over leveraged. So I think we all have that kind of those things to manage in our personal lives. And in
mm-hmm,
terms of like with couples, also have your money date nights and do the quiz together as a couple and figure out your personal financial identities and work it into your money date nights. You'll find that
yes,
you have more empathy. You can communicate better. Now you understand. Now I understand why she's like that or why he's like that. Because that's
yes.
genuinely where he's coming from. That's where she's coming from. And you understand each other better so much more.
Yeah, I love that you answered my question that I never asked. What do you do with couples? And so you essentially have that date night, you do a mission statement as a family, I'm guessing, or as a
Mhm,
couple, and
mhm.
you reverse engineer if you're a couple or not, and you then create goals towards that mission statement. Question for you.
Mhm.
So, couples are very often different in the way that they spend. My husband and
Yeah.
I both have ADHD. He's a huge risk taker. I'm not. And I've learned in coaching and in marriage that sometimes you have to agree to disagree, and sometimes you have to be independent, or sometimes you have to be interdependent.
Mhm.
What do you suggest to people who have different money styles and identities?
Absolutely. And it's a huge question because research shows that 80% of couples have different financial mindsets, different financial identities, different financial mindsets. So if you are, have a different personal financial identity, different money mindset than your spouse, just know that you're in good company, because 80% of us, that's the case with 80% of couples. It's the same thing with my husband and I. He's a minimalist. I'm a risk taker. And
So it's mine.
exactly. And so there's
But
a
it's funny.
lot.
My husband's a minimalist, but he's the risk taker.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm not a minimalist and I'm not a risk taker.
Right. So it's a lot of communication, negotiations around, okay, here are the things that we're going to prioritize. And that's why I think doing it in the context of money goals, doing it in the context of a family mission statement,
Mm-hmm.
and really being on the same page. There's some day-to-day deviations, of course, that
Mm-hmm.
you can agree on. Say, for instance, I know certain couples have like a global spending limit that they agree on, that
Mm-hmm.
both of them will not, both parties won't go over that limit. So, of course, there's
Mm-hmm.
room for deviation, there's room for independence here, and there's room for even carrying out personal goals that need to be carried
Mm-hmm.
out. For instance, if you're starting a business, or you're writing a book, or you're doing something else that's going to require some kind of financial outlay that the two of you, though, have agreed on,
Mm.
is a path that the family should be taking. But there is room for negotiation, and doing this as a couple and knowing your personal financial identity actually helps you to hone those skills more. For instance, my
Mm-hmm.
husband tends to be more the organizer. Like, I'm not organized in terms of documents and financial statements, and I don't like, organizing paperwork or even spreadsheets, or so he
Yeah,
takes on that role. And so, from your different identities and from your strengths and weaknesses, who's better at what. And so you can divvy up the work that way.
sure.
I tend to be the one who's more, call it ADHD, if you will. Like, I have this, I don't have the attention span for doing that kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
he is more willing and able to sit and like go through these things and spreadsheets, and like, you would think that I would be, because I'm
God
an
bless him.
economist. No, I know, I know that's true. So it really does help you find out which one of you, like, who does this best, and you cut, and you become more efficient, and it becomes like a
Yes.
real partnership.
Yes. Well, isn't that life in general? I mean, you want to find someone whose strengths are your weaknesses and vice versa, so you can complement each other and lean on each
Exactly.
other and trust each other. And also, money or not, to communicate, to have those date nights. I love how you call them like money date nights, where you check in with it yourselves, but you make it fun. It's not this like long, arduous, tedious task. It's it's a scary thing, but you can make it fun by
Absolutely.
surrounding it as a date night.
Exactly. And then when you bring to the fore things that you're excited about, so we might not be excited about spreadsheets and money apps, but we might be excited about our next vacation. We might be excited about planning
Hmm.
or budget for that, or
Oh
for
yeah.
that destination wedding we were invited to. I'm just thinking of a couple of my, or anything like that, our kids' university planning, like things that we get passionate about that bring us joy, are some of the things that we can use to anchor these money date nights. So it's
Mm.
happy, it's creating memories, and we don't have to
Hmm.
feel like it's a chore, like,
Totally.
yeah,
Totally. I love that. So like bringing the joy back into being responsible with your
exactly,
money and your partner's money.
exactly.
So, what do you recommend? So, obviously, we all have different identities when it comes to finances, but what do you recommend to someone who, has very impulsive ADHD, they overspend, and then they find themselves in debt? So, obviously, they need to become aware, but so many of us with ADHD spend because we're seeking that dopamine and we don't necessarily have a grip of what's happening month to month, what's coming in,
Mhm.
what's coming out. So, what practical tools do you have for people who are those impulsive spenders and get their family into debt or get themselves into debt?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I think that's why there's certain key core strategies that are so important for those individuals and everyone in general, like getting a grip on your budget and really sticking to it. And so when, we spoke about the money date nights, some people have them bi-weekly, some people have them monthly. If you feel like you're in that position, I would say you need to probably do them weekly to bi-weekly and really stick to the budget to see what's going in, what's coming out, and really focus on what's going out and really trying to stem the flow of what's going out, especially if, and I know because you mentioned the impulse spending and that desire to spend. And so it's how can we use mindfulness techniques? How can we also embrace other strategies that are part of holistic wealth too, like not only mindfulness, but spending time in nature, seeing how we can kind of regulate that impulse to spend some more.
Yeah. So it's not a reactive strategy. It's more of a proactive strategy.
Exactly. It's more of a proactive strategy and being really, really self-aware to see, okay, is it that I need to spend less time doing X, Y, and Z? Because that is, like temptation for me to try to shop. Like if I'm on Amazon, maybe I need to spend less time. If I'm doing this and that, maybe I need to spend less time doing that. If I'm out shopping with friends, maybe I need to. So it's,
Yeah.
getting a hold on that budget and really, you know,
Recognizing the triggers, right?
exactly. And also knowing the triggers. Exactly. And really planning ahead. And if you know those
Mm-hmm.
triggers, then it's easier to plan ahead to say no to those activities and putting boundaries around,
Mm-hmm.
any type of activity that will lead to a trigger to spend. And I think, that
Mm-hmm.
goes for all of us practically, but I know it's so much more difficult. So I completely get that we, with ADHD, it has to be far more methodical.
Mm-hmm. Because we're now or not now. So it's very hard to remember what you have and what you don't have.
Hmm.
So that shiny, bright object might look really good. And then the guilt sets in afterwards when we look at our bank account and we overspend. But it's funny, I've had clients in the past who've tried to freeze their credit card, like literally put their credit card in a freezer so they wouldn't touch it.
Right.
But those are all reactive strategies. And I love how you say, like, check in with yourself and focus on, the mindfulness, focus on the triggers, focus on your boundaries, because your whole shift in spending, impulsive or not, will change. Like the mindfulness will actually change your impulsivity towards spending.
Absolutely. And there's this holistic wealth like method that I outline in the book, and this has to do with spending a lot, especially impulse control. And I often do it, with myself as well when I get tempted. Is this going to add to my holistic wealth bank account or is this going to deplete it? And when we think about our
Mm,
holistic wealth bank accounts, we're not only thinking about like financial things, but in this example we are because we're thinking about spending. But I think about financial resilience as well. And I often ask myself, so yes, is it going to add to my holistic wealth bank account or not? But is it going to make me more financially resilient or not? And financial resilience is another piece I speak to a lot because we have to think about those spending decisions that help us bounce back whenever we have a setback. So when you think about the shiny object or the next big thing or the next thing, it's like, well, is that going to help me? And I know we can't do that with every single purchase
sure.
decision because that makes no sense. But when we get carried away, especially during these times, right, where every dollar counts, it's
Yes.
unbelievable with inflation and everything happening around us. It's a very
Yes.
good time to start thinking, you know what, if that, I don't know where we're heading with these wars and conflicts.
I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah, yeah,
because with the wars and conflicts, not only is there inflation, but there's also depression and
yeah,
anxiety and stress. And what do people do when they're anxious? They
exactly.
want to make themselves artificially happy
Yeah.
in whatever way possible.
Hmm.
So very often they can spend more
Yes,
because they're anxious and depressed and they want to feel
absolutely.
good, right?
Absolutely.
One
Absolutely.
thing that has worked for me too is obviously knowing when I've hit that burnout boundary, right? When you hit burnout and you're anxious and stressed and depressed, you've already gone too far, right? So you have
Hmm.
to like really take care of yourself and go back to that awareness and core piece and your hierarchy of needs. But
Hmm.
also, when I'm seeking dopamine, which we all seek dopamine from time to time, ADHD or not, I have fun with it. I actually go into Amazon when I'm bored seeking dopamine and I'm just like, ooh, what's exciting? Or like Facebook Marketplace, right? Not with the intention to buy. Like
Right.
maybe I trick myself and I'm like, oh yeah, maybe that would look good or whatever, right? Because I'm not a minimalist. But I just put it in there, leave it in my cart, and then generally speaking, the next day, I'm not even interested in it anymore. But it was
Yeah.
fun to just like see what's out there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good way. And I think you mentioned that too on my podcast, that
Oh,
strategy
okay.
of just filling your cart with it, but not pressing the purchase or buy button. Just
Yes.
kind of window shopping, if you will, because that takes away that, that urge, that strong, overwhelming need, right? So that's also a
Yes.
good way. And of course, once you know that you have the discipline to actually carry through, adding to and not pressing that buy button, then that's a good way of just like leaving it there and just walking and being
Hmm.
like, well, okay, I've seen it, and I'm good with leaving it there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And as holidays come up, I highly suggest any ADHDers out there not to buy your friends gift cards who have ADHD because they will go into the gift card graveyard. They will not touch it and you will lose money and so will they. So give them physical money
Yeah.
or a product.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And I think too is also planning your spending wisely for the holiday and not getting
Yes.
overwhelmed with going to the mall and
Oh
not
my
having that
gosh.
shopping list or that budget and then overspending again, especially as we look towards holiday shopping. There's Black Friday coming up and Thanksgiving, and so that's also very important.
Yeah, my husband and I actually said, you know what? Like there's things that we want for like traveling the house. Why don't we just put the money that we would typically spend on presents into that for the holidays? And I thought it was genius because like
Yeah,
usually the stuff that are bought for me, I don't really love anyway. So
yeah.
might as well do something that interests both of us and we both get a reward from that.
Exactly. Absolutely. Because, we get stuck in this routine every year of like, okay, so what do you want for Christmas? And it's just like, well, I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know. And then we're
Right.
thinking of things, conjuring up things to get, and
Right. Just to get.
just to get. Exactly.
And generally speaking with ADHD, you're going to buy the things that you want anyway beforehand. So like you're kind of left with I don't know, what's shiny new and exciting. So think of something that you actually really need that can benefit you guys. Maybe it's this long-term thing that you need to put money into and eventually get out.
Absolutely, because I think too, with a lot of individuals with ADHD, it's also, looking forward to retirement planning, looking that long-term planning aspect needs to be taken care of as well. So I think that's
Mhm.
a good way to kind of think about the long-term needs, instead of,
Mhm.
just the more short-term.
What would you recommend? I don't know if this is in your book, but when you have money coming in from presents, especially with the holiday season coming up, how much do you recommend someone save and spend or invest?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And of course, it really is very individual and unique to everyone. But I always tell people, because people have asked me this question a lot too, should I be paying down debt or should I be saving? Should it be one or the other? No, I think you need to look at financial resilience. And there's a whole chapter on it too in the book. And if you feel like you are very short, if you feel like when you survey your financial landscape, you wouldn't be able to overcome a setback if it were to come tomorrow, then you really need to be putting more towards the tools and and strategies that will help you become more financially resilient, and things like your emergency savings plan, your life insurance, your different insurances, your different savings and investments. If, I always, when I train holistic wealth consultants, I always tell them, if your client can't weather 2 setbacks per decade, and I'm talking about 2 huge setbacks per decade, life altering, then you're not really financially resilient. You need to shore that up a bit. So when we think about, gifts coming in for the Christmas, or telling people what you want for Christmas, or planning financially as a couple for the new year coming up, we really need to have financial resilience at the back of that, because there's so much going on. There's so much uncertainty, as we discussed. And really, that's going to be the key thing that helps you weather any storm in your life. So that should be kind of like the backbone of, thinking about, how much should I put towards this savings plan? How much should I put towards the kids' university? Am I low? You know what? University tuition fees, Brooke. My son started university in September.
Oh my
They are
gosh.
wild, and nobody's talking about this much, right, anymore, because it's all different things that are important, like wars and things. But like, university tuition fees have skyrocketed under the radar.
Oh my
And
gosh. Yes.
it's unbelievable. And so what we all need to be doing is really checking in. If we have kids in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, we really need to be monitoring those, and monitoring whether we're even saving enough. Like, is this going to even cover a year? Possibly
Totally.
not. So when
Totally.
we think about Christmas, and how we can utilize, and how we can, be strategic with our spending, I think those are all considerations.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's super helpful. So, Keisha, where can people find you if they need more help with holistic wealth?
Yeah, so the Institute on Holistic Wealth is really kind of the coaching arm of the work, and the website is instituteonholisticwealth.com. There are a range of resources. There's a membership plan, plus there are different courses. Like we spoke about money trauma, there's a money trauma
Hmm.
coaching program there as well. That's very, very helpful, I think, for everyone, not just, those of us who think we've had like a huge traumatic setback, but for everyone. And of course, my main personal website is KeishaBlair.com. I do also host the Holistic Wealth podcast, so feel free to check that out.
You could check out our episode on there.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Keisha, what's one piece of advice that you want people to leave with today?
Honestly, I think during these times, I think shoring up our resilience muscles is something that I really love to leave people with today. I think emotional resilience in particular now will become the bedrock of kind of, or not only our money decisions, but our relationships, our lives going forward. So that's the one piece of advice that I would leave people with, is to just shore that up. And whatever it is that fills you up, makes you feel more mentally strong, makes you feel more bold and courageous, especially during these times, very difficult times, is to just do that, and fill your holistic wealth bank account with the people, the things you love around you, nature, all of those things that fill you up and make your life seem more meaningful. So that's kind of, what I think about going forward on a daily basis. And of course, it will absolutely add to your financial life as well as your overall life.
Awesome. Well, follow Keisha Blair, get her book, Holistic Wealth, if you aren't going to dig into her course right away, or get coached, start here. You could also find her on Instagram. Thank you so much for being on today's episode of Successful with ADHD. And I wish
Absolutely.
everyone with ADHD and beyond financial holistic wealth.
Amazing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helped you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.